Okay, so let's talk about creating and building incredible things in your life. So most people exist on some form of of this kind of like two-bucketed spectrum, which is either having the sense that there is something great that you want to be building and doing with your life, you just don't know what it is. And for a lot of those people, there's a feeling like they should know, and because they don't know, it means like that indicates something um negative about the reality of their potential. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have people that have a notion that they know what they want, but are, somehow it's just not showing up for them. And so both of these are specificity problems, and we're going to get into how to solve that. But so, like, an example, even for wanting to create something bigger is, I once had an executive say, very successful executive in a well-known company say, I want to create my own thing, but I don't have the big idea. And there was a sense of shame in that. And then I have people that tell me that, like, I want to be rich. And, it's like, and it's not coming through for them. So what I'm going to talk about in this video is, at the end of it, I'm going to give some really specific actions for the first steps to take in the process of what's conventionally called manifestation. But manifestation has a mix of things that are both like pretty magical and ethereal and also super practical. And how do I know this? I mean, I have made, like small fortunes. I own multiple homes. I've lived all over the world. I wrote a book. I've, gone to yoga school in India. I've scaled mountains in Nepal, surfed in Africa. I mean, I've lived a pretty, aspirational life, starting from a very low point, which is I went to college. I put myself through college in the same town I went to high school in, and the support system I had was like pretty lax. So how do we do this? How do we create lives, and how do we do incredible things, and how do we find what our purpose is? Now, quick commercial for Parinama method is that it is about ascending through actualization to sort of clear the way for being able to kind of travel back down through the hubs, so to speak, and to basically consciously create things. So there's 7 stages in manifestation. And, one of the things I love is watching like the TikToks and the, the little BBs talking about, like affirmations, even people who really get into working really hard, and to me, these are things that come a little bit lower in the process of being able to find this stuff, because one of the first things is that there's a specificity problem. So when I'm talking about that spectrum, there's a specificity problem, which is not knowing what it is. And also, I'm going to say, on the other side of the spectrum, when it's something that you want and it's not coming through, it's also about not being really specific about what that is. So, it's like wanting to be rich, right? Without really naming like how much money that actually represents and really what that means for you. And even to an extent, how that would feel to be rich. And also, as far as the, as far as the other end of the spectrum of not knowing what the idea is, it's there's actually more of a specificity in terms of the questioning there. So we're going to get into that here. So so to begin with, so I'm going to tell you what the 7 stages are, just so you have an outlook, in case you're like, why aren't we thinking about this yet? It comes, and they actually all play into each other by knowing what's on the roadmap. So the first thing that we're looking at is we're making space for something new. And an analogy for this that one of my teachers uses is that if you're going to cook a meal, you have to have an empty pan. If there's already a meal cooking in the pan, it's hard to like start a new meal on top of that. So one of the things we're going to talk about is creating spaciousness, and that has to do with not only finding pockets for silence and stillness and space in your life where there isn't noise, and however much, people have like different levels of tolerance for this, but even just to be able to create some expansion in that. And the other thing is just literal space. It's clearing things out in your home that are like cluttering like things up. So it's like moving out old clothing, moving out clutter, moving out books that you're never going to reread, maybe decorative elements that are just collecting dust. It's creating like some like openness in your world, even your desk, your working space, making sure that has an openness. And so the first step is you're creating space and you're creating some silence because you're making room for something new. The next is that you're finding out like what this thing is, and this is through a process of inquiry, and this is what I'm going to talk a bit more about specifically in this video. After that is you begin to clarify and visualize. So first we're figuring out what it is, and then it's almost like it's like almost like pixels, like kind of popping in where the vision becomes a bit like more clear. And then after that, where we begin figuring out how to articulate it and talk and speak and bring words to what we're doing. And they don't even need to be like hyper specific in the beginning, but we're beginning this process of crystallizing this. And this is a place that's really uncomfortable for people, because when we feel the urge to create, we associate that with doing. And so this is this very different space, which is like very liminal, which is, which isn't a lot of doing. It's actually like antithetical to doing in a sense. And so being able to even manage that discomfort is a real thing. And what you do get is people who don't want to manage this process of inquiry and discovery tend to start creating things that they see other people wanting. So like, where you'll have people say like, everybody wants this, everybody wants this, like these generalizations, and that's not the case. Like, so part of what we're going to talk about is finding the thing that actually like directly maps to you. So part of the thing, so next we're talking about articulating this, and the articulating part, and this is really important because as that starts to, it almost like sort of technicolors, it starts to become a bit more vibrant, clear, articulated, then you begin to enroll the right people to really activate and take part of this. And now the reason I bring this up is it's really important to understand, especially in this early phase that we're going to talk about, is that you do not need to be good at everything that's required to get your thing done. And so that's a limitation. People go, oh, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. Your vision is going to attract people who are going to come into the picture and become really interested in being part of this project and activated and energized by it. And this is something, if you haven't done it before, it takes a little bit of a leap of faith. But if you think into your own experiences, like I think it's pretty natural to be able to find that where people get excited about a project that you're working on or something. If you played in a band, if you've like had a party, whatever, that people, once you have the idea, people start coming into it and wanting to take part in making it happen and bring their own talents and gifts to it. For example, writing my book, I didn't know how to write. I wound up having an editor who was extraordinary that wound up being like a Sherpa for me, teaching me so much about the process of writing. And then, so you enroll people, and then comes the work, and there's a very specific like quality to this first phase of work that's very like targeted, focused. Then after that, for the interest of time, I'm just gonna really tighten this up. It really is about like emotional resonance with the world and figuring out how to make what you're working on really like work with its audience and find its audience, and also knowing yourself, and then it's really landing it with commitment and consistency. So we've already talked about space and clearing out physical space and making space. And so if you're following along in the book, chapter 10, there's, in chapter 10, you've got page 265, which has practices and techniques and exercises for stillness and space and cultivating that. Next is what you're looking for is inquiry. So it's really common that, when we're talking about those two buckets on that spectrum. You're talking about people who feel like they're supposed to already know something. So it's even the way folks are approaching it, like the question, like the inquiry. So it's like, or it's either as like affirmations like, I am rich, I want to be rich, without any, kind of specificity. And like sometimes, like people get a little bit more specific, but instead of saying like, will I have enough money, it's like, getting into the thing of like, how much money do I need, how much money do I want, like what is that? And that is part of getting in that, like, so that's one end. But the other end that we're talking about, which is how do I find this idea, is realizing that perhaps the sense of not having it is looking back, like you've got people who said like, I should know what I want, or if I knew I would, and this kind of thing. And so this is dropping back into a place of inquiry. So what you're doing is you're asking a question. So it's like, so for a good example of this is like, will I be happy? Will I find my purpose? And it's asking specific questions of saying, what is my purpose? And it's waiting for that to kind of arise. And asking in earnest. So it's not like a throwaway question. It's how you ask it, saying, what is my purpose? And, how do I best serve the world? How do I best serve people? How do I align with my values? How do I come, it's like, how do I come to understand my values? And it's asking questions in earnest with a desire to understand what the answer is. Now, it's really uncommon that you're going to ask the question, the answer is going to come flying back at you out of the universe. It actually kind of coaxes itself out, because in a lot of ways, like we have actually, made it hard for the answers to be seen and heard, because sometimes they're contrary to the things that we like hold as truths and stuff. So there's a little bit of coaxing and saying like, I'm willing to hear what this is. And so places where you can find this is, one is keep a journal next to your bed. So theta state, when you're kind of between wakefulness and sleeping, is when your brain is like particularly receptive. And you have people that talk about like being in the shower, brushing their teeth, these places where you're kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, is it's like, that's where my best ideas come out. So, and another key point to mention here is like the blue light from phones like cuts it off, like it actually like ends theta state, and it actually wakes you up. So what you're trying to do is like actually write it down, so you're staying in the analog world, or is it analog, it's just paper world. And being receptive. So it's asking the question in earnest. So the question is, how do I serve the world? Like, what is my purpose? Or, like whatever the question is. But, and like, what does it mean? Even what does it mean to be happy? Instead of saying like, will I be happy? It's like, what does it mean to be happy? And one of the other things in terms of what like receptivity is paying attention to the things that you gravitate towards. And so this can be challenging, because we can feel like there's things we're supposed to be reading, looking at, paying attention to. Like these feel like the things that are like the responsible, right, intellectually curious things. But ultimately, you're using this kind of divining rod sense of like, if somebody recommends a book and you go, and it's a weird thing, it's something you'd never read, like pay attention to that. Somebody recommends a podcast, or something pops up in your feed, or there's a quote you see somewhere, or somebody says something, and it's just starting to really pay attention to that pull where somebody says something and it really stands out to you, and listening to that. When I was like, the entire book that I wrote was written from that perspective of it being inconvenient sometimes. Like I'd be on a tear with something and wanting to pursue it, but it'd be like losing gas. And so like being able to just let that go and just refocus on whatever was coming in, and it worked out. So, paying attention to what gives you energy and making note of that. So this is where I'm going to stop in this video. So so what I would say in terms of the next, the first steps for, it's like, okay, you're like, all right, how do I manifest? How do I create my life's purpose? How do I find these things? How do I build a life that's like incredible, like that's really aligned with like the sense of what's meaningful to me? This is the first tasks are create space. So find a way to create silence in any way that you can, even if it's just for minutes, and expanding into that, just like allowing that. And also clear physical space in your home, in your working space, around you. Even cleaning is really helpful. I think I think one of the things about like dust is it sort of like absorbs light. So you're kind of creating a lighter, spacious, more clear environment. And the other thing is to ask questions. So formulate questions. And in the Parinama book, if you're following along, page 254 has the exercise for inquiry and some real specifics about how to shape questioning. And so that's particularly helpful. And then on page 265, there's the stillness, concentration, focus practices there. And then, of course, on page 289, there is the entire chapter related to this that has all 7 stages in it. So that's at parinama.com or the parinamamethod.com. So please, if you want to see another section here, if you want us to go down next a little bit further, please like and comment. And your wish is my command. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to the next one. All right, bye.